Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Data Analytics Platform for the Mission, sponsored by Splunk on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are Frank Domina, the Vice President for Public Sector at Splunk, and Juliana Vita, the Chief Technical Advisor for Public Sector, also at Splunk. In the last segment, we ended talking about data and this idea of data reuse. And Juliana, you came up with a great example of a national lab that started for one thing and used the other. This is actually becoming more common, though. Are you seeing it with more customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the most exciting thing that we see at Splunk is finding out what our customers are doing, the creativity that they're applying to the data to do things all across their environment. So first I'll talk about a private sector company that most of your listeners are probably aware of or can relate to, and that is Domino's Pizza. So most people think Domino's Pizza, they're a pizza company, but actually they've transformed themselves into a quite sophisticated digital logistics company, let's say. And they've had to. Look at all the companies that have grown up around food delivery. Well, they had to transform or they were going to be in trouble as a company. So now, most of their orders and their interaction with their customers is digital, as you might imagine and as we all know. So they're using Splunk to automate and find efficiencies in their ordering, their delivery, they're keeping their 30-minute maximum delivery time promise, but they're just using the data to be smarter about which drivers and where they're going to go and their routes. And that's you just don't think of a food company that we all kind of have heard about for years as being digitally transformed into this new tech company.
They probably started off just, how do we make sure we get pizza from point A to point B?
Exactly.
And then they saw all these other uses like, whoa, but we can see how much flour we're using, how much sauce.
Right, exactly.
And we're seeing that across government. And I think, the evidence that senior government leaders are starting to be acutely aware of the value of data is just the rise of the CDO. The Chief Data Officer is becoming an important initiative at a lot of federal agencies, and you're seeing that develop. And I think 2020, we're going to see that role take on lots of new responsibilities. We work with many public sector agencies that are starting to see that data can have such value outside of traditional IT and cyber use cases. For example, we work with a county in California who the sheriff department is taking interesting, innovative approach. How can we leverage data? So what they do is they create mashups of geospatial data, maps, and other information about their county, and overlay accident data and crime data and human safety data. So they can start taking a predictive look at, hey, is this a certain area or an intersection where it's more prone to accidents, or there's some problems with fires happening in this neighborhood. I can apply public resources in advance to better serve my citizens by creating data sets that combine these sets of information. And these are the same data sets that help with cyber or IT or application support.
Do you find that agencies are worried that their data isn't perfect, that we don't have the right data or enough data? And do you help them get over that? Just start. It doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. You'll work toward that perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we spend a lot of time on. Again, as I said earlier, it's definitely a journey. One of the first things we do when we start partnering with a government agency or an education institution is, what questions do you want to ask? Okay?
Right.
What are you struggling with? What information do you want to know? And usually what we find is the initial set of questions are not the real questions. It's a breadcrumb trail that leads to the real questions that they're struggling with. And that takes time, and we have a lot of experience and best practice how to iterate faster and get to those questions. And then the next part is, how do you put those questions, deploy them with technology so they're asked automatically and they're asked for you. So Juliana is an executive at a government agency. I can start handing her information before she asks for it, so she can have it at her fingertips when she needs it.
And that's why when you brought up this idea of AI ML is having such a big impact, is if you can start automating those questions, those answers, and giving that data, so then, okay, I can, at my fingertips, call it up, okay, now let's make a decision. Where are we with that AI ML use? It's early stages, predictive analytics, but still it's moving in that direction, Juliana?
What we're seeing and what we're doing with our products too is embedding the AI and the ML in the product so it's seamless. People don't know, they're not saying, oh, I'm going to turn on the AI today, or I'm going to make this easier.
AI button.
Easy, the AI button.
There's no easy button.
So regardless of what happens under the hood, the machine learning is happening, and the person's job, they just know it's getting easier. They just know that when they ask a question or they type in something on their keyboard, data is given to them or information is given to them. That helps them take an action or make a decision and move faster to the next phase. We can do that in some of the commercial tools that people have gotten used to with search, but they haven't really translated into enterprise networks that agencies are using. And that's where we come in. That's where we bring in our embedded AI and ML to have the system learn as people are using it, so they don't have to spend as much time doing the manual effort, digging for data, looking in an Excel spreadsheet.
That's why we have such a large public sector organization as Splunk. You have to understand the customer's mission. You have to understand the problems they're dealing with if you're going to apply machine learning. The foundational component of any type of AI machine learning approach is large data. Those technologies, those algorithms work best when you feed them large data sets that they can analyze and generate patterns and find anomalies. But what we're really talking about here is what some folks at Splunk like for the democratization of data, making everyone a data scientist. So I don't need to know it's machine learning. I can just give someone a really simple interface that is easy to digest and understand and make a decision off it. And that's something that we put a tremendous amount of R&D into through the design of our software and our interface is how do I make everyone a data scientist? How do I make every role at an organization or agency be able to consume this complex data?
Before you can go down a path of embedding the AI or the machine learning, is there a piece that has to come before it on the government side? Not just what question or what are we trying to answer, but where does the data exist? And then, okay, how do we make sure you can get access to it? I mean, are there all these pieces that have to kind of be put in place, and that requires a different set of skills for the federal employees?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a couple answers. So first of all, you have policy issues, right?
Yeah.
Do we have the right jurisdiction and rights to access all this data? And at some agencies, that's easier than ones that are more complex and have different operating divisions. Then you have the technical challenge, right? How can I build a scalable, robust platform that can scale? We're talking about petabytes or zettabytes, giant data sets. And there's not many technology, I know one really good one, but there's not many technology that can handle that type of volume and variety of information without having to transform the data or edit it or put it in a certain format. And then of course, it's really about how do we help enable the workforce? And Juliana spent a lot of time on this. I know it's something she's very passionate about.
So when it comes to the workforce side, what skills are you seeing that they should, the kind of short-term skills that, hey, I need them now, or it would be helpful if you had them, and then there's a long-term set of skills? What are you starting to talk when you talk with your clients?
I like to think of the long-term set of skills, because what the government has that some people see as a liability is actually a huge resource, a huge opportunity, and that is a large workforce. Many people who have been in the agency a long time, they've bought into the mission. They're not going to move their family again. They're in the game. They want to stay for a long time, and they're public servants in their heart. They want to do good things. But often they have skills that have atrophied. They have skills that are no longer relevant. And that is sort of viewed as like a threat to people. But people should remember when the Industrial Revolution happened and we had factories taking over people's jobs, people didn't stop working. They just started doing different things. And that's what's going to happen with AI and ML and all these data jobs, we'll call them. I think what's the problem, though, is that a lot of people are intimidated by those because they've been left out of the conversation. They've been doing the same job for 10 years or 15 years and haven't been given incentive, really, or excitement about go learn this, go learn that. So everyone doesn't need to be a PhD in coding or data science, but everyone needs to be data literate. They need to understand what it means to execute good cyber hygiene, or how to protect the data of it in their environment. But people want to be relevant at work. And for many workers in the federal government, especially those who've been around a long time, many of them just don't feel relevant anymore. So that's up to leaders, to leverage technology, to bring in new ideas and kind of bring them into the fold so that they can feel good about work again. The nature of work is changing, the number of years that we work is changing, and bringing people in, reskilling them, making them feel part of the revolution is the way to get more out of them.
There are things that we in industry can do to help enable and accelerate that. So something we invest a lot of time is how do we make our products easier to use? How do we make data easier to consume? So we've added things like natural language processing to our platform that I can ask questions in plain English of my data. I don't need to be a coder to interact with it. We have augmented reality in our products so that I can use a mobile device or a tablet to get information on my job without having to use an advanced computer interface. And so there's things that the industry is doing to raise data literacy and skill up the workforce.
I think you make a great point. Not everyone has to be a data scientist or have a PhD, but you have to know a little bit, and part of that is the tools. If I'm giving a set of tools that are easy to use, that I see value in it. It's nothing worse than you use a tool and you're like, I don't understand what I'm doing. I mean,
Right.
I think we all kind of face that in one way or the other. The other piece of this that I think we should just touch upon is privacy and integrity. We talked a little bit about with security, but this is a different, how do you ensure that the data that you're using is meeting a certain level of quality and assurance that you're going, okay, is this the right data, and can I make the decision off this?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I've been in cybersecurity for 2 decades now, and we're seeing a shift. And so in cybersecurity, there's 3 important tenets: confidentiality, availability, and integrity. And a lot of the past 2 decades, the security we've been focused on, the attacks we've been dealing with is around confidentiality. Can I steal your data, have access to your private data? Or availability, can I shut down your access? That's what ransomware is all about. But integrity is something that hasn't always gotten a lot of attention. And I think in 2020 and years ahead, we're going to see an increase in attempts to undermine data or to attack the integrity of your data. And so if I can start to manipulate the data that you're using to make decisions, I can now dictate a certain outcome. And you think about the world we're in today, knowing that my data is valid, having a single source of truth is so important to my function in public sector. We're entering what some people have called a post-truth era, where how can I know that what I'm looking at, what I'm listening to is accurate? So that's why this approach, being data-driven, is so important, that you can have confidence in your data sets and what you're using to make decisions is accurate. That's something that some of our customers are working on right now. Census Department is about to launch the first digital census. They're going to be talking at our government summit on March 4th at the Marriott Marquis about how they're approaching this challenge.
And I think the census has that huge challenge ahead of them as they collect the information. Is it integrity? Because so much is built on that census data. I think you're absolutely right. Juliana, the last word here on the sum it up for us, wrap it up in a bow. When we talk about data, when we talk about decisions, what's the one thing agencies need to keep in mind as they are continuing down this path?
Agencies should remember and recognize that they have more data in their environment than they're aware of, and that they know can be useful to execute their mission, whatever that is. And that they should be thinking about that data as a resource for every mission, not just the IT or the cybersecurity, but the HR, the weapons on target, the health of the workforce, the citizen experience, and just start thinking about data as another resource, just like you would money and training.
Open the aperture, if you will, for what the data can do for you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, so let me thank my guests. Frank Demina, the Vice President of Public Sector at Splunk. Juliana Vita, the Chief Technical Advisor for Public Sector, also at Splunk. I'm Jason Miller. You've been listening to the discussion, Data Analytics Platform for the Mission, sponsored by Splunk on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Splunk.